Hi, good morning, everyone. Good evening to the audience who will be joining from India. I'd like to welcome you all for this session. Today's masterclass is all about cracking sales for B2B tech in the US market and setting yourself up for success into 2025. I'm Vishwendra, your host for the session, and I'm building Growth Sutra as a brand and revenue accelerator for emerging tech enterprises. Before we deep dive, before we get started, let's make this session interactive. Please say hi in the comments and share your name and location. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comment section and we'll make sure to respond to these questions. If you miss any segment in our video in this session, no problem. The on-demand replay will be accessible on this page. And even if you want to watch any of our previous sessions, you can go to our YouTube channel or you can go to LinkedIn Live, a specific LinkedIn Live session link, and you can watch the replay from there. Uh, having served as the head of marketing for our global region and Asia Pacific region within large and mid-sized IT companies, I have personally witnessed the difficulties of fostering business development and demand generation in regions where the team or company lacks a presence. And when you are targeting customers in developed markets such as the US region, it also raises cost of sales for Indian companies. If your experts are in India and the prospects in US wants an in-person meeting tomorrow, you lost the deal already. Moreover, for effective digital sales, if teams are not efficient enough in identifying leads online or nurturing them and preventing lead leakages across channels, if the prospect's queries, demos, and objections are not addressed proactively, you may lose that prospect forever online, and it's like a lost business. So today's session cover three broad areas. One is we are going to delve into critical tips to close sales faster in the US market. Second is optimizing efforts through AI and automation to reduce sales costs while at the same time ensuring productivity enhancement. And third is essential components of the 2025 sales playbook that can actually enable you to build a strong pipeline and win more deals throughout the year. So before moving forward, let me invite the speakers that we have today. We have a lineup of experts, experienced experts in, they are experienced in closing deals, building sales playbooks for high performance teams, and using AI and automation to boost revenue growth. So let's begin with the introduction. Let me invite Dean Noli. He's the CEO of Sales Growth Imagination and an outsourced sales leader. We have Ben Victorica. He's the Senior Vice President of Sales for KnowledgeNet AI. And then we have Drew, who is the founder and CEO of Sales Playbook Builder. So welcome everyone for joining this session, and thank you for your time today. I think it's going to be great fun for all of us. Before we move forward, let's begin with a kick-off discussion on why this quarter is critical for B2B technology, especially when you look at, like for instance, I have spoken to certain high-performing tech founders and sales leaders. For them, Q1 is crucial, especially in terms of their sales planning when they are targeting US market. As in US, enterprises normally set their strategic priorities, and tech sellers, they normally have their sales kickoffs and business planning discussions. Dean, you attended such session recently. So considering that Q1 is a critical time for US enterprises, from your experience, and this is a question to all of you, from your experience, what makes Q1 such a make or break quarter in B2B sales, and what should companies focus on right now to capture early momentum and build a pipeline for long-term success? Dean, we may probably start with you.
All right. Yeah, I think the biggest thing, Dean Nolly, Sales Growth Imagination. I'm empowered by sales acceleration that builds sustainable, scalable sales growth models, but also Blackstone and Cullen, which is AI software development. And the biggest thing that I see, Vish, is people try to run and aggressively scale where things aren't even working. So I can't even call it a sustainable model. So you're really needing to fix, repair, get things working, get it sustainable. And at that point, go and build a scalable model that's repeatable and predictable. I think that's the critical part. Too many people are trying to run before they have the right structure and the right tools in place. And I think we'll be covering and walking through that today. So are we going around the house now with each person before we get to the slides, or do you want me to tee those up now?
No, let's have a few words from Ben and you as well.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
Ben?
I think specifically when I think of Q1 in the first half of the year, brings me back to my first or second sales job. I was working for 3M, and we were in the automotive aftermarket division, and we would sell sandpaper, tape, all that sort of thing. We had probably about like a $10 million territory in the kind of the GTA and Toronto area. And as an organization, as a sales team in Ontario, we always, when we were forecasting for the year, we always front loaded the forecast to Q1 and Q2. And that helped in terms of push us a little bit in increasing our activity in the first quarter. Because a lot of times we know that sales don't happen within 24 hours. They could take a month, 3 months, 6 months, a year to come to fruition. So we always had this mantra of building up our activity and putting more pressure on ourselves in the first half of the year to help make the second half a little bit easier, or easier for us to go over our goal. But it's hard to chase when you're in the third quarter and you're behind by 10%, 20%, whatever it is. It's hard to make that up in 2 months, because a lot of things happen October, November, December. So I think specifically for Q1, front loading that projection for the year and front loading a lot of that, a lot of the sales activities and lead generation activities is how I think of things.
Yeah, and to add to what Drew was saying, which is really true in our economy, there's a lot of business that does happen in October, November, December of the year. Budgets are fixed. You know, you're the IT executives that you may be calling on. They've set their budget for the year. They're looking to make sure they spend all that money, because if they don't, they won't get the budget again for the next year. So the fourth quarter is really important. And I've been in technology sales for 15 years, 12 of them with Microsoft, which was acquired, where Nuance was acquired by Microsoft. And with our incentive and compensation plans, it was critical for us to make the entire quota by September, before all the additional buying kicked in, because that's where we made our multipliers. The compensation plan had very large incentives to pay more after you attain your quota. And so that was a very, very focused effort on the sales teams. The people that, you know, went to the chairman's club trip or the president's club trip, you know, those different types of incentives, all of them made their quota by September. And I was fortunate to do it every other year, because then the accountants make higher quotas, but that's a whole different story.
Hey, one thing to add, Vish, because listening to Drew and Ben, I was with a client earlier this week, and I think what Ben is saying with things being backloaded, it puts you in a bad position from a profitability perspective, because you're having to do unnatural acts to grow the business. I was with a client earlier this week, and we were in our team sales meeting, and we were really looking at how do you price deals to be more profitable. And, you know, it's February and we have the luxury to do that. And it was interesting, because as we were comparing, what you were seeing as a trend is each of the reps are trying to be more value added, strategic, and the impact of how they're paid by having significantly higher profitable deals. I mean, you could see the focus. And I think when you get backloaded at the end of the year, you don't have that luxury. I mean, you're trying to drive numbers to hit the targets and, you know, make sure your company's goals are achieved.
Yeah, you know, exactly. So this is what I have also seen in my previous life where I was working with TCS and CETA and other small and mid-sized companies. So they normally set their targets and normally used to have their business planning discussions and um, uh, giving sales quotas in the quarter 4, and quarter 1 is what you begin with your sales kickoffs. And Dean, you mentioned about profitability. So there's always these conversations that are happening in terms of what are the accounts that we can target for the year, how we can make our approach, which can be more profitable, how we can win more opportunities, or have a cross sell and upsell opportunities in some of the target accounts. But yes, that's why I felt that Q1 is certainly a very critical quarter for B2B tech sales, not only for US but also I think for markets, for all the markets. Dean, if because you have been actually working with some of these B2B buyers, you understand the nuances in terms of what drives them, what are their strategic priorities, and when in fact uh, when we also work with some of these B2B tech companies, we also look at what are the trends which are coming up in that market, what kind of investment that's been planned generally by the tech buyers, or even if there are certain accounts that are part of named accounts or high touch accounts or low touch accounts, what are their tech priorities for the coming year. So do you see because you have been working with the buyers and sellers, do you like to talk about some of the trends that we should be mindful of, B2B tech sellers should be mindful of when they are looking at the US market?
Yeah. There's a number of issues, and when we get to kind of the context of a few slides, we'll touch some more. I think one of the biggest impacts, if you'd asked me a year ago, Vish, I would have told you that it was predominantly a broken sales process and maybe some strategy elements missing. We're really encountering a major silver tsunami with aging population in the US, and everyone talks about it in context of business owners that are either selling their business, transitioning to family, maybe an ESOP. But if you look on average at a $20 million company, there's 3 sales professionals in their 60s that are also exiting. And it's due to retirement, it's due to health, it's relocation to family, grandchildren. And I've got 1 client and then 2 other onboarding clients that collectively have lost 9 sales professionals that are loyal, that are almost like family. They know the product, services, they know the competitors, customers, and they care. They're not leaving to go get another job, they're exiting. And the smaller the company in the SMB, the more catastrophic I'm seeing that impact their business, because now companies are having to back up, slow down. They're going to have to adjust their culture to attract and retain Gen Y, Gen Z. It's not just going to replace the people. So that is probably the more staggering issue that I'm seeing. And unfortunately, very little transition or succession planning. And that is something that's real. And it's right there with the challenges we see on no sales process or a broken one.
It's interesting you say that, Dean. It makes me think of this idea of tribal knowledge within those industries and within those sales organizations, where if you have, if you're on a team and you're a new rep in the industry for 5 years, but you've got guys that are supporting you in adjacent regions that are part of your organization that have been around for 20 or 30 years, there's just so much knowledge that they know from picking up from experience that to transfer that knowledge to that new team is like that's a huge gap. So I think there's like the talent piece that you're talking about, and also this tribal knowledge about how do you extract all those insights from 20 years working in a territory and pass that on to the team to ensure that there is that consistency and succession planning from a sales perspective.
Yeah, I've actually seen that kind of knowledge transfer which happens. It normally takes at least 3 to 6 months before if you have a new sales who's onboarding, they take at least 3 to 6 months before they can actually start delivering on certain specific sales team nurturing. Irrespective of whether they have closed their deals or not. But then even nurturing certain clients and understanding the ecosystem, understanding the solution, that itself takes its own time. So yeah, I would agree that. Dean, you have some slides that you want to talk about, some specific trends that you want to cover. You quickly want to cover those trends?
Yeah, if you'll throw those up, because I think it'll put in context for you, Ben and Drew, and how this all ties together. So, as we kick off, of course, I have to say, go dogs. So when you see the coffee mug, can't leave that one alone. But this is a great session for me because, as my good friend Mark McKenzie in Atlanta would say, it's like going to a networking meeting with three wingmen that I really appreciate and work very closely with. So the four of us finally been on a call together. It's almost a little giddy for me because it's rare that you have people that you trust and you can count on, like the three of you. So one of the biggest things I see, and I have a little fun with this one, is that if you see Denali's, I mean, in my family, on Mount Denali. But what I find is most companies, when I come in, they've had challenges. They're busy in their business. They're not real trusting to reach out when they have. Unfortunately, way too many people try to sell versus help and educate. So everyone expects a silver bullet. I mean, so the biggest part is you got to slow down. So I showed this as scaling the summit because ultimately what they want, instead of scaling Mount Denali, they want to be like what my family did in about 25 minutes. We jumped on a K2 aviation, flew to the top and landed on the glacier. Well, that was a great experience as a vacation. There's no silver bullets in the business. So you got to really back up and slow down. What I'm generally dealing with is here. And there's processes that are broken and they need to be fixed and repaired. And I don't even mean getting sustainable. I mean, you got to get to where it's working. And then you start building out that structure. If you don't do that, you're going to start trying to grow on something that's really not repeatable, predictable. So I always kind of laugh about the one, and I know everyone has seen it. I don't have to outrun the bear. I just have to outrun you. And I think in this world and people trying to go too fast, that's really applicable. On the left side, or really in the middle, Abraham Lincoln here. I mean, look at this quote. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. Well, this to me, and the reason I have it here, it's all the mistruths and all the bad assumptions about what AI is going to do for you. And I actually have a bourbon cigar group that this image was appearing. We're talking 22 grown men, and half of them actually believed Abraham Lincoln said this. I mean, that's kind of frightening, right? And I think that's what's happening with AI. So I think the key is slow down, make sure you're dealing with good, clean data. And in the world we're talking about today, we're talking about how do you help someone grow sales? And the only way you're going to do that, it's got to be your customer-driven centric data. And on the left, this is one that my good buddy Lee Blackstone at Blackstone and Cullen, I would give him credit for this, about AI won't take your sales job, but someone using it probably will. Well, I think when you hear Ben today, I'm not boasting on this because I think I would have a lot of customers and a lot of sales professionals not content, but we actually have some customers that have replaced salespeople, and they're doing it specifically with KnowledgeNet and the AI processes. So pretty powerful. But again, you're going to hear about the importance of customer-driven data and what that can do to let AI enable it. That's really the secret sauce. This is what we're dealing with. I mean, I'm not going to go into all the details, but when you look at strategy, process, the metric analytics, and the people, this is what business owners, over 6,000 is told Sales Acceleration. Look at staggering. It doesn't say that they're struggling with every component within each category. But look at those numbers. I mean, this is what we're seeing in SMBs. And you take it a step further with the people. This part is the one that is absolutely critical, because now with the generational gaps, there's certain technologies that absolutely apply to Gen Y, Gen Z. And a lot of what we're talking about today actually fits that mold. So, but you do have cultures that you've got to build, and you've got to figure out how to adapt to all 5 generations. And no sooner than you have this accomplished, look out, the alphas are going to be here in about 4 years. So, I mean, you're going to be dealing with a 6th generation that'll be the most technologically savvy generation we've ever seen by far. This is when people get confused, and I'm throwing this up just to have a little fun. This is a subset of what I deal with on the people part of recruitment, training, onboarding, all of the different operating systems like EOS, System and Soul, all the different services that I would provide. But you get around CRM, CRM implementers, installers, SEO, the web maintenance, all of the tools that touch clients. You can confuse someone in about 2 seconds, because trust me, this is a subset of what I deal with. So when you think about a business owner busy in their business and starting to reach out, there's generally not a right or wrong way to do it, but you can get pretty confused because every productivity partner company out there, they're trying to sell and position the way they do it, not necessarily what's important for the client. This just kind of puts it in perspective, is slow down, and whatever you do and whoever you're working with, you got to really make sure that you've addressed every element of sales strategy, sales process, all the measurables with the scorecard and those KPIs. They got to align to the company goals to be successful. They've also got to be realistic for the sales organization, because if that balance doesn't exist, it's not going to work. I mean, it's a train wreck ready to happen. So, and then also with the people part, I don't think I have to stress the importance of that to everyone. I'm just saying that you have to adapt to the new generations, and kind of teeing up here, because I think what's fun here is, we're talking about the structure slowing down, but now we're going to look at the marketing expertise, Vish, that you have. We're going to look at what Drew is doing with his world-renowned sales playbook builder. I mean, this thing has absolutely changed strategic roadmaps in helping people to plan for their exits and really have that strategic playbook, not just for today, but for 3-5 years. And I'm going to tell you, on the people side, whatever that bullpen looks like today, it's going to look quite different, face by face, of individual contributors and probably leaders in 5 years. So getting this well documented and positioned, but this playbook that Drew's going to talk to, but more importantly, the data that needs to be captured and the time to do that right, that is so critical, because this is a company's roadmap. But then when you see what Ben is going to talk to with these playbooks and this data around you as a customer, enabling you to go find your target customers, better qualified, hit the pain points of those ICPs, meaning those customer profiles. Most people will have more than one. I think you're going to see this tie together. But again, my only caution is slow down, build the structure, build the tools, make sure you have the right marketing content, so that when you start touching those clients, you're starting to do it successfully, and then build on top of that. So crawl, walk, and then get ready to run for that growth vision 2025.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks for setting that context. In fact, you had shown a couple of good slides, and one of the slides that actually caught my attention is the tools, the automation that is kind of that is now prevalent in the market. I think every organization today, they have their own set of tools, productivity tools, or AI apps, or even agents, right? So while while we we could use these tools, but at the same time, we have to also look at what tech buyers would be, would prefer in terms of a vendor who would like to work with them. So, and especially when you have a seller or when you have a vendor, tech vendor who is joining from India, building that credibility with the tech buyers is very critical. So in your journey, when you have spoken to some of these US buyers, how do they evaluate new vendors? So it's similar to like when you build your ecosystem of agents, of tools. Similarly, a tech buyer might be building the ecosystem of the preferred tech vendors who can provide them services over a period of time. So how do what motivates US buyers to go with a specific vendor? How they evaluate those vendors? What are the top deal makers that often derail promising deals? So could you share some insights from that perspective?
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of go in reverse because I think that it's a great question, and the real answer is they don't want to evaluate any new vendor because you've got to back up and find the pain and the opportunity. Think of it this way. I mean, you think about a client. I mean, have they effectively built competitive benchmarking so they really know where their product services fit, where their competitors are, what are their sweet spots, where can they drive the most revenue, what target groups are where they're going to make the most profit. So I think the most important thing is you got to get away from the product set altogether, and you've got to really not sell. You got to listen to the client. You've got to really understand where their pain is or opportunity. And then at that point, Vish, it's not as much about the company or the product. It's about making sure that's applied to that pain point or that opportunity to grow. So I think, honestly, that's one of the challenges in SMBs. These business owners are very smart, great people, but they're very busy. They're in the business. So when they reach their head out to try to look at an area where they need help, they're being bombarded with multiple technologies, multiple approaches. They're all different. And it can be very confusing. And unfortunately, if not careful, people make an investment down a path that winds up not being something that they're going to basically toss it off the shelf and move to the next. So I do think that part is almost part of slowing down. And I think it will tee up very nicely for what Drew and Ben's going to talk to, because this is the part that is the secret sauce, but it does take time and a lot of effort to work through that discovery to put that into the whole sales process.
That is correct. So in fact, even like there are certain companies that I work with. So if their business model is more from a services perspective, and if there is a small and mid-sized companies, if we are not talking about large IT companies like TCS or Accenture, have built their model on services business. But for small and mid-sized companies, normally they begin with the services business, the services model, and then they question their own services model. They would like to experiment with product-led model. To have some products built in so that they can use those products as door openers for when they are targeting certain buyers. So and that's why I felt while they have that focus, but they are not actually clear in terms of a consistent sales process. So I'll come to you. When you work with the small and mid-sized companies, and when you see that there's an inconsistent sales process, because many companies they have an impression if they have a good product, they can probably have a 3x or 5x growth with that product. But when you have these companies transition from informal sales tactics to a structural, repeatable process, what kind of, at what stage should they consider building a very structured sales playbook?
Well, they need to do that out of the gate, but before you start investing in people, you've got to have the process, the technology, that's got to be nailed down. And at that point, based on what that shows your strategy should be and from a go-to-market perspective, that will also determine what kind of people do you need. Do you need a BDR that's going to operate mainly on email, the phone? Maybe it's more of a SaaS model, or are you going to need to go to market via channels, so dealer, distributors, mass distribution, manufacturing reps, or is it a product solution where you're targeting larger accounts and you're going to really need face-to-face selling? I mean, those are different kinds of skill sets. But back to your one, aspect, Vish, I do think having strategies of to get your foot in the door, and I think we've talked on this on a previous session about the Trojan horse approach, right? I think that is a great approach, but that should be built into the strategy and the process. So whatever that one product is, let's think through that carefully and then know who are we targeting that and how are we then going to take that next step once we're in the door. But again, instead of throwing that out there, let's make sure we've carefully vetted that and built it so that when we hit go to market, we've thought through it. And I got to tell you, a lot of cases, I don't care how good we all think we are, we need to be curious. And we need to know that certain things, good and bad, we're going to uncover. You got to be willing to say, hey, we're not on the right path and let's pivot. And we're going to tweak this approach. I think that part's critical too. But I love the aspect of getting the foot in the door, because ultimately, if you can get your foot in the door and love those customers and delight them on your service or product, that is building that trust that enables you to then get a bigger footprint within that customer.
No, I get you, Dean. I think these are these could be good tactics that sales team can follow. But what is also important is to have a consistent sales process, and that's where Drew, maybe you can share your insights in terms of how to build that entire sales process, which can become more consistent and repeatable.
Yeah, so thinking of it from the perspective of a CEO founder, you go through a sales journey when you're growing and scaling your company. And typically you're starting out as you wear all the different hats, but you typically are the one selling from day one. And you're probably going to start selling to your industry connections, to your network, to people that you know, some warm introductions. So sales can sometimes be, especially in a B2B, maybe a little bit, you get lulled into it being a little bit easy at the beginning because you have a lot you can pull on your network and people can do favors for you and help you out. And they might choose your solution over somebody else's because you already have that connection. That being said, the transition that founders then go through is, okay, I'm selling to people who are familiar with me, to now I'm selling to complete strangers. And when you're selling to complete strangers, you have objections, you have different discovery questions you need to work on. You have a more challenging sale because now you have to overcome, who am I? Who is our company? Where do we fit in this ecosystem? How can I help you? Why should they trust us in order to rip out an existing system? So in the beginning phase, you're going to be doing things. You should always be thinking about the future, which is scale and growth. In order to scale and grow, you need processes and playbooks. So that should always be, as a CEO and founder, in the back of your mind. How are we documenting what we're doing and capturing these best practices so that we're setting ourselves up for that next level? But early on, you're probably going to be having a sales process that isn't scalable. You're going to be very hands-on. You're going to be working, doing things that you probably shouldn't be doing because you should be focusing somewhere else. But you're focused on getting those first 10 customers, 100 customers, whatever that looks like for you. And then when you're transitioning from that founder-led into more of a team-led, where you're going from being the main seller to bringing on team members or fractional support to then go sell, you're moving from a seller to a manager, and you need to set your team up for success. And that's when you need to make that bridge, which is the playbooks and the sales playbook, where you take what you know from your sales process, from your intimate knowledge of the buyer and how they work and how they buy, put that into a playbook, so then you can transfer that tribal knowledge and that somewhat of a process that you've been working on into the hands of the sales team. And then it's a matter of monitoring and tweaking as you go, because you're not going to have a structured sales process from day one. You're tweaking it as you go, and you're learning as you go.
So when a sales team or even founder use a structured sales process in the form of a sales playbook, what kind of impacts are we talking about here? So what kind of impact that we can see in their productivity or their, so is that measurable? Is this something which we can say from here, if you have a sales playbook, you may probably see a performance increase by certain extent. So are there any impact that that you can also put a light on?
Yeah, there's research around structured sales processes. I think Harvard Business Review did an article on that, and I think it was like 20 or 25% faster sales cycles when you have a structured sales process. I forget what the exact number is, but there's a Harvard Business Review that talks about the importance of sales playbooks and structured sales processes in organizations. And so that's one piece. Another piece you just think of, like, especially early on, if you're bringing on new team members and transitioning from founder-led sales to building a sales team, you can think of ramp time and onboarding. So we talked about how long it takes to close a deal. Now we have to bring in a new rep, train them up, get them to the speed where I was as the CEO and founder. And if they don't have an operating manual to just look at day one, they're going to spend a lot of time pinging you on Slack or sending you a text or calling you for questions that should have been taken care of in the training and onboarding, which is in that playbook. So reps are getting to the phone faster, they're closing deals faster, and they're more confident sales reps because of it.
Yeah, I have a customer that we can share with the audience, we can share the information. But to give you a high level overview, this customer had 6 inside salespeople, customer service representatives that customers would call in and place orders, and they were ordering ball bearings. I never knew that there were so many different ball bearings, but this company has 20,000 in inventory for all types of applications, from aviation to a remote control car to a fishing reel for saltwater fishing. Ball bearings are used in many places. We were talking earlier about the knowledge, institutional knowledge, or someone that has been in that business for a long time, and they would rely on someone in the organization that had that experience. Anytime a customer called, and they called 100 times per day or a couple hundred times per day, it would take 2 years for someone to be comfortable enough to make a recommendation for a ball bearing, because there were so many different types that could fit, but there were subtleties about lubrication if it's in food processing, or silence if it's in maybe again in a blender or something. So there's lots of different areas that once they had this brain built, this institutionalized knowledge, a sales playbook built, then it reduced that time by adding AI to it and operationalizing it. A customer would call in, they could ask the assistant, the AI assistant, the question of what the customer needed, and it would instantly provide the top level recommendation, the pricing, the reasons why, and how much was in inventory, the B level recommendation with pricing, the reasons why, and how much was in inventory, and the C-level recommendation of the same. There were 10 different options for the ball bearings, and it was prioritizing the top 3 and giving that information directly to the CSR while they're on the phone with the customer. Because if they don't do that, then the customer calls someone else the next day if they have to get back to them. So that's one example of how, building that institutional knowledge with a sales playbook and then bringing it to life at the point of where these Gen Z, this transition of knowledge is happening, bringing it to life right where people are working. And now the person that has more job satisfaction as well, because they're helping customers and they didn't have to struggle for 2 years. They can be effective in less than 3 months.
Right. So, in fact, you made a very good point. When you are in B2B sales, due to long sales cycles and the complexities which are involved in terms of understanding the buyer's ecosystem and what are the capabilities that we bring in terms of the services, in terms of products, there could be various permutation and combination. And if you are not clear in terms of how you can create value for your buyer, and if you can't have a structured process for creating that value, then you may lost in the translation. So thanks, Ben, for sharing that example. That actually fits in very well with when we work in a complex environment like in B2B sales. And in fact, here in the B2B tech scenarios, we have seen some of the tools that have been used by sales team that I've seen, in terms of ROI calculators, in terms of battle cards, in terms of your messaging document that talks about sales pitches, or that talks about product features or capabilities. Now, small and mid-sized companies, when they are starting or they are building a sales playbook, what are the minimum or non-negotiable elements of the sales book that they should consider? So this is a question to Drew and all of you.
Yeah, well, I can talk about definitely. I think I can talk about what's kind of the contents of it, and then I throw it over to Ben to kind of just think about, because I think about 2 things. One is, like, to your point, what do we need in a playbook? How do we just get started with a playbook and start documenting that? But then, in a non-negotiable in today's day and age, is adding AI to that playbook in some particular way, because if you're not doing that, you're going to be left behind, and that's just the reality of today's world. So first of all, structuring a sales playbook, at the heart of the sales playbook, you got to put yourself in the shoes of the buyer, because when we're building a sales process, we're really matching it up with the way that our buyers buy. Because if we're not in line with how they buy, there's going to be a lot of disjointedness along the sales process, and it's not going to be a smooth process for them. So really understanding who your buyers are is going to be at the core. So start there, and then we can build from outside of there. Because once we have a good idea of who we're targeting, our ideal customer and our buyers within there, then we can build messaging, we can build meeting scripts, we can build discovery questions, we can build out objection handling. So the core non-negotiable for the playbook is think of your buyers, get your buyers in there, because the sooner your sellers can understand who their buyers are, the better conversations and the better insights they're going to have to help move sales along, because they're empathizing with that buyer. And then once you kind of have that down, just think of your sales process from start to finish. So how do you get your leads? What do you do with them next? You get on a call with them. Are there other people you have to meet in a second call? Then you have to send out a proposal. And then what are those steps? And essentially, once you kind of just map those steps out, then you can start filling in the blanks of what do I need in each of those steps to be successful. So it really just depends on where you're at, what your sales process looks like. But start with your buyers, and then map out your sales process and look at where you can help enable that. And then once you have that kind of core knowledge and document, then we can layer AI on top of that.
Yeah. So you talked about certain process. Then, in fact, when we look at, if I can remember, it's normally the sales and marketing have a lot of processes to follow. And because of certain reasons, because this is how it's been built, especially when you look at enterprise teams, their sales and marketing or product teams, they are actually creating or refining their sales decks like 10 times before they meet a customer, or they are building ROI calculators that can actually talk about the outcome that it can deliver. uh, Conducting account-based research, which is again manually most of the times, searching either online or looking at their, say, financial statements or their press releases, their websites, so on and so forth. And then at the same time, you have to also update CRM systems. So there are a lot of tasks that sales and marketing or even revenue ops team they have to perform in order to meet certain performance criteria, which has been set by the founders or their managers. So when we look at so many different repetitive tasks, and at the same time, when there's a long sales cycle and complex decision making processes that are involved, what could be the biggest productivity bottlenecks that slows the teams down when selling to US enterprises? Ben?
Yeah, well, every one of those points is a bottleneck, a different persona that you have to be an expert in addressing with a different battle card, for example, or a different data sheet or a case study that you need to provide them experience. So in every area of the sales process, you're going to be dealing with different people. And technology sales, and in my experience in the past, the person that signed the agreements, which were multi-year, multi-million dollar agreements many times, was the CIO. But I was working in enterprise sales, and so I had to build the business case across multiple different decision makers so that when it got voted on by committee, then there would be a resounding yes. I need it because of this. I need it because of this. I need it because of this. And so I would include the CIO in the conversations and early on in the process and get their buy-in on the overall process. But then I would not deal with them that much. I would build the business case throughout the organization, leveraging all of these tools that I had to do by hand before the AI even was enabling and providing for the immediate response to those things. And so now when you have this playbook built and you leverage it with AI, we can be in a conversation or a Zoom meeting like this. And Vish, if you had an objection about something or a question, I could have an instant answer for that. I wouldn't need a team of sales engineers that understand all the business process automation steps. I would, as a sales executive, can have sales engineers that support me, but I don't need to have a 1-to-1 ratio, which many times happens in these types of scenarios, because that's something that I was working in too. Mine was clinical workflows and hospital systems for surgeons. So imagine the complication of EHR systems and surgeon personalities and the clinical staff that had to do things. So bringing this into the sales world is very straightforward and a lot easier than surgeons documenting their surgical cases, leveraging AI. But it's available now, and customers are benefiting from that because the sales teams can be more confident. They can deliver the right answers to the information, because with every time that they are offering something, there's an artifact that shows the details within it. The white paper, the case study, the battle card, all those things are, and the sales playbook it has that all embedded in it. And then they can see the actual page or send to the customer the collateral material to provide proof of what they were discussing.
Right. Yeah. So there are two elements that you talked about. One is, of course, the efficiency that can be brought from the automation perspective, and at the same time, the sales team can also become intelligent. If you're getting a response to objection from a customer, write there during your conversation when you do not have much information, but you can leverage technology or automate or AI to kind of identify what could be the response, which resonates with your messaging. Then it's like, it's speeding up the entire sales process or the buying process for the for the buyer. So yes, automation is playing. I also see automation playing key role. But then the challenge is, what are those tools? What specific AI tools, minimum automation that we need to have in the sales process? Means, if we are looking at building a sales process, what automation strategy that we should follow?
Hey Ben, you should probably touch a little bit about the brain and apply the AI to that, because what KnowledgeNet does with the customer data and how Drew helps tee that up, and how you can target to the pain point of an ICP. I mean, that's really redefining not leads, but good, strong opportunities that really accelerates the sales process. So if you could touch on that, that would, I think it ties into Vish's question, but that I think would be real helpful for the audience.
Yeah, I think that as Dean was mentioning, the brain is made up of the customer brain, the client brain, the people on the phone, your businesses. KnowledgeNet can ingest information like the sales playbook, you connect to your ERP system, connect to your sales and marketing information, connect to your website, listen to your social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. And all of those areas, it becomes an expert in your company that then enables the sales team to be able to answer these questions, build a proposal, provide all the automation, including things like this meeting today, or when you're in a Zoom meeting and you're automatically recording it and doing the transcript. So the transcript, which is a vital tool, but sometimes just gets dropped in the CRM, can now be used to extract what did the customer say? What was the quote that they saw the value in, and then reposition those things back in a proposal, which is a common thing that we do. So there are several tools that you would be using, and by building the brain and ingesting that information, then it can be utilized, efficiently and immediately, right at the point of sale. That's the critical part, right at the point of sale. Because if the person has to say, "I'll get back to you tomorrow," they lose credibility and they lose time. And so you need to have that efficiency kind of upfront.
Yeah, that makes a very good point.
And when I think of other tools, because you're asking specifically about tools as well there too. So I definitely think like KnowledgeNet needs to be on an AI stack moving forward for businesses. But I just did a quick search in ChatGPT and I said, how many AI tools are out there today? And it said it could anywhere between 10 to 20,000 or even more. And so I think I don't sit here and kind of think about, okay, which tools are the best, although that I know KnowledgeNet is the best. We're a little bit biased here, but you really have to, Ben was talking about the brain. It's like tools help you do more, help you grow, help you scale, help you do something you've been doing in the past over and over and over again. And so if you don't have that foundation, if you don't have the playbooks, if you don't have that right messaging, then an AI tool is not going to fix that for you. All it does is amplify kind of the mess that you have already. So you need to organize the business in playbooks and document processes in order to build, whether it's human capital or AI capital on top of it.
I agree. And in fact, when I look at some of these tools and the organizations that are using these tools, most of the times they are using these tools for that initial journey, wherein to do the outreach or to send out a very tailored message to that target customer. But then what is also important is you have to nurture those contexts over a period of time. and when they are tools, then why don't why don't the tools are being used for nurturing those contacts over the entire sales journey, and you can actually have a certain repeatable task which can be managed by tools, which can be managed by AI agents, but at the same time you can focus on how to build trust or relationship with your target prospect, so that it can increase your probability to win deals with them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
Dean,
one
you have
thing,
something.
Vish, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the one thing with AI in the sales process is there's very specific AI tools that do certain tasks or functions. And they do it very well. And I think the key is making sure in the sales process, you know where your gaps or opportunities are, and you're leveraging the right set of tools. Now, KnowledgeNet fortunately goes across multiple spectrums, if you will, in helping to identify and be able to make engagement with your better qualified opportunities. So for someone in an SMB growing a business, it serves a perfect task in niche. But as you know, you had Lee Blackstone from Blackstone and Cullen on a call earlier this month, and I know again in late March. I mean, what Blackstone does, they have a tool, Level 42, that really is all around custom AI, and it is really going in redefining the requirements and practically writing the code, because their background is custom software development. And so I think that's the most important part is, are you dealing with a business challenge far outside of sales? Because that's really what Blackstone covers. It's really business challenges in general. It could be data warehousing, supply chain distribution, but specific to sales is making sure you have the right tools that are addressing what's going to help you best be sustainable and then build that scalable model. And that's where I see a lot of misses out there. And in fairness to Drew's point, I mean, someone looks up, just like the busy slide I showed, you can get confused in about 2 seconds, and everyone's telling you why their mousetrap is the best. And that doesn't hang in. People are selling, which really turns off most small business owners.
Thank you, Dean. So, we have 2 minutes left, which is not enough time, but I have one last question. We talked about these tools, and we also talked about the various tactics that Indian companies can deploy when they are targeting customer acquisition in US market. Uh, Now, considering the fact that there is a digital noise, there's so many conversation which is already happening in the digital world. How can an Indian company stand against or stand out in that digital noise, or even competing with some well-known US companies in this market? What tactic an Indian company can follow?
Hey, Vish, I think it starts with you, because with you in New Delhi and having that credibility and presence and reputation that you do within India, I think that's a great starting point. The beautiful part is we're all together as partners, and we're the feet on the street. And I think from a culture perspective, we can put the right people, process, technology together. But I think it really starts with Growth Sultra and what you do on the marketing side and all the great content and tools there, because ultimately that's going to set the first impression with whatever we do, with we build out. So I think with your feet on the street in India, us in the US, and I guess we could say Drew in Canada, right? The 51st state. But I think that team approach enables us to really keep each other accountable, to really do a great job for these companies coming in to expand into the US market.
Thank you, Dean. Thanks for those kind words, and I agree that there's collaboration approach that we are all bringing here for these Indian companies, and that can be leveraged by them. So I would recommend these companies to either reach out to us or share their or speak with us one-on-one. If they have any specific queries in the areas where we bring our expertise. So, but I'd like to thank you so much for joining the session. And actually, we have covered everything from Q1 strategies to automation, structured sales processes, and how we can differentiate in a competitive US market. But I'd like to thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience with the audience today. Before we wrap up, I want to remind everyone that success in the US market requires a clear, structured approach. Implementing the right strategies early in the year can make all the difference. If today's discussion resonates with you, start applying these nights right away. Thank you all for joining our session. We'll see you at our next 2020X Vision Masterclass, which is on March 20th. You could find the registration link for this session in the comment box. But we look forward to seeing you on that session. So until then, keep closing those deals. Thank you so much.